Hey there, it's Maria Thacker with the Vitals podcast, delivered by Georgia Life Sciences in partnership with Cloudcast Media, and I'm really excited for today's conversation. I'm excited to welcome David Crean.
Thank you for bringing me on.
Yeah, no, and you're with, how do you do it, 1004?
How about 1004 Venture
1004 Venture Partners. First of all, it's been great to have you visit us here in Georgia, bringing your expertise from the West Coast, which is obviously a big hub, and just your years of experience in investing in this industry. Georgia, just to lay the landscape, is, you're likely aware, we're, I would say, an emerging market. We're growing. Atlanta as a metro is obviously huge in this region, but we have a very diverse set of industries across the state, agriculture and things like that being huge. But Atlanta in and of itself, we have everything from, UPS supply chain and shipping to Delta and soda companies, Coca-Cola. It's not like we're one singular city, industry state. So life sciences, while it's been supported and it's growing, consistently, I really look forward to diving in a bit more about how we can get your thoughts on how we can build the ecosystem some. And a big piece of that is access to capital. And I'm not going to lie, we're also dealing with some interesting capital markets at the moment.
Pretty tough.
I think we're all hoping for some stability in the coming months, but it will ride it out as a resilient industry. But let's just dive in a little bit. First, let me ask you about you. Give me the high level. What's your background? How'd you end up into this sector?
Great question. How much time we have?
Not that much, no.
It's very circuitous. Background, PhD in physics and an MBA in
Dr.
finance.
Green. I should have said that. My bad.
There you go. And so it's a great combination for getting into sort of the business of biotech, business of life sciences. It's really great. And from there, really just went more into the, how do you grow companies externally through mergers and acquisitions? So not organically, but inorganically. And I've been biopharma for about 20 years, private equity, VC, and investment banking.
Oh, all of them.
And the swim lane, As you think about all the deal makers around the table, so I have all that experience, but it's always been in the swim lane of life science and healthcare.
That's amazing.
And so, it's, I moved out from Western New York many years ago, straight out to California. And
where are you originally from?
Originally from Buffalo, New York.
New York, okay, yes.
Yeah, so don't hold it against me.
No, I don't. I don't envy the winters. No offense to my friends in New York, but
yeah, no, good people.
Yes.
Love my background. Love where I grew up, but I needed to get into a more friendly ecosystem, which was driven by life sciences, pharma, biotech.
That's great. And then you ended up in the Bay Area. That's where you are now, right?
I spend about half my time up in the Bay Area, but I'm in San Diego.
Oh, you're San Diego. Great. So we'll have to catch up at the next bio convention if you stay in town or run away from the crowds, whichever.
No, I'll be there for the 50th anniversary, right?
Yes, I know. So. It'll be my 19th bio convention. Yeah. Ooh, I've been doing this a while now, too.
You're now starting to reach where JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, which is in January. Yep. I'm on number 29.
Impressive. Well, I don't know if I should say I'm sorry or congratulations. No, it's a great conference. It's exhausting too.
It's a great conference, and I call it the circus, and there's a reason for that. It's just a lot of people running around with ADHD and trying to meet with investors and tell their story, hearing their pitch.
Well,
so it's pretty exciting.
Well, that's great. And personally, I think ADHD is sometimes a superpower when you're having to network the ways we have to. Well, that's wonderful to kind of level the playing field and kind of set things. So let's dive a bit into capital and risk. Biotech cycles are brutal. Yeah. What's a more resilient funding stack for early stage R&D? Venture, foundations, non-dilutive, of course, VCs, family office, strategic. What do you think really works in practice?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question on sort of the venture funding stack, or at least investment funding stack. One, I think you have to pursue multiple avenues. I know of some CEOs who have just pursued NIH funding all their life, and in fact, I sit on a board of one. She has raised $24 million in NIH funding. Wow. Has never gone out and done an equity price round or going out to VCs or anyone else. And there's risk in doing that. It's great too,
especially right now, I would imagine. But
so there's risk in doing that. And on the other side, there's some investors some CEOs, founders who are not going beyond just like traditional venture investor. You have to really know your investors very well. Like, why do I want to go to VC? Why not go to like corporate venture capital or CVC? That's an alternative investment class, or family offices, or high net worth individuals or foundations, things like that. So you really need to understand what your financing strategy is and who's going to fit into that, because at the end of the day, not every investor is going to be the right one for you.
Yeah.
So I think you need to pursue multiple avenues, non-dilutive as well as dilutive. On the dilutive side, it could be VC, corporate venture capital, family office, and looking at strategic partnerships as well. So there's the funding stack. You have to pursue multiple avenues. Just don't rely upon one avenue.
Yeah, that's interesting as I reflect on our community, and we had an investor conference here for the region in the Southeast about a year and a half ago, and some of the feedback we got from investors is like, I want to come back. It's really interesting. But a word that we found in the feedback was the region, the Southeast, is ripe for the taking for investors, but there's a slight lack of sophistication was the word they used. Yeah. And the way we reflect that when you got deeper into the feedback, it was people are just throwing darts at every type of investor without really researching who the investor was and making sure their product was aligned with that investor and adjusting their conversations. So do you think that's an important piece of the, entrepreneurs are pursuing funds?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, besides being an investor, I'm a mentor and a coach. And when I'm sitting down with founders and I'm telling them, like, understand who you're going to, understand what their investment thesis is, how large their fund is, what do they like to invest in, take a look at their portfolio companies, really try to understand the investor, because the more you can connect with the investor rather than the pray and spray, hey, I have, list of,
not really
on my
quantity
Excel spreadsheet, I have
quality,
my list of 200 investors I'm going to go to. I'm just going to blanket email, cold call them. The probability of success on it is less than 5%.
Really? Okay.
Yes, it's terrible. So, I'm really truly connecting with the investor, trying to understand why they write checks into people or into companies. That's really, really important. So it allows you to customize your message as well. So unfortunately, you don't see that with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, they're probably strapped for time as well as cash, but it's an important tip. I mean, I think it is time consuming, and we're also seeing AI do it for investors, which is a whole other thing I find extremely impersonal. But it is, so diving back into some questions we talked about, instead of reducing the 90% failure rate, where can founders most meaningfully raise the probability of success?
Yeah, it's a great question, because that is just inherent risk to our industry.
Yeah.
We're in a loss game, right? You're starting when you're starting at ground zero, you're already looking ahead and going, guys, 90% of companies fail. I tried to tell founders and entrepreneurs, don't perseverate on the 90%. Think about risk mitigation. How can you improve those odds? If you're in discovery or preclinical, what do you really need to do? What are those killer experiments that you need to do to mitigate that risk, to get it into the clinic, to file an IND, to get it into, first in man. So that's what I try to tell them, like, tell me where, if you're going to look at inflection of your valuation and milestones of your company, what are those key experiments that you have to do, whether that's CMC related or if there's a certain animal test that you have to do that you need to really prove, a proof of concept. That's what I try to get the people to sort of focus on. Don't perseverate on the 90%. Just try to mitigate the risk.
Would you give the same exact advice on the medical device side? Because it's
med device is a little bit different. Because for med device, which has a shorter development cycle, I say let me see the proof of concept, get some data on it, start thinking about reimbursement. That's an important part. So clinical data and reimbursement are certainly very, very important. And then overall, just with the two of them, whether it's drug or device, get some traction. Start thinking about, what does that, those customers look like? Start thinking about strategic partners. Do you have any partnerships in the area? For me as an investor, I look at four things. I look at team, and I mentioned this yesterday at our meeting. I look at team, data, traction, valuation, and that's how I make decisions. Now, the data one is kind of the big onion. You can peel it back. It's IP, preclinical data, clinical data. So that's how I look at it. But traction is super important as an investor.
No, that's great. And I think the team piece is I think for the emerging markets, we have an especially harder time building the perfect team. But I will say, post-COVID, we can have teams diversified, across geographic regions now. So I think that's allowed for that. Historically, it's been a little bit more challenging to find that, I would even argue, middle management to upper management, because we just don't have the density of industry and experience here. But I think that's where mentors and others helping support your network come in and build things. But so the elephant in the room, considering where we are right now, we are in uncertain economic times, climates, interest rate pressures, inflationary trends, and shifting priorities under the current administration. How are you seeing these factors influence investment strategies and deal making in the industry?
Yeah, it is a particularly tough investing environment right now.
And I realize your answer could change in 8 weeks.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
how things are moving.
We're in a liquidity crisis. I don't think it's a sentiment issue. We have a lot of macroeconomic challenges and that are really causing a lot of consternation and agitation amongst, especially.
And unfortunately, we can't control it very.
No,
yeah,
we
it's
can't.
out of our.
Especially among generalists. Specialists, I think, are always going to be specialists. Biotech or life science investors are always going to be there. They're a little bit more cautious and taking sort of greater time with their diligence. But generalists have fled the market. IPOs are very few and far between right now. I'm certainly more bullish on 2026. So, just given that, you really have to, as a founder and entrepreneur, you have to think about, and we talked about the capital stack, right? Just have multiple avenues of how you're going to get the money. Yes, we have some challenges with NIH funding and some other thing, BARDA, exactly. So I think you have to have that capital stack mentality and just start looking at a number of different sources for the money. Money's out there. We all heard it, right? And everyone's saying, all right, if the money's out there, why isn't it opening up? There's a lot of cautious optimism to that, but also a lot of cautiousness as an investor because we're being more selective. We have a flight to quality right now. John yesterday from Bio talked about the haves and the haves not. Unfortunately, that's what's going on right now. We're all looking at de-risked assets, especially later stage, because the earlier stage stuff is just a little too risky for us.
And they're the ones most at risk right now, especially with the NIH aspect and all that. And I think, they're trying to survive, and we are a resilient industry. But I mean, I have a colleague in Virginia has a couple companies that are going under because of some of this, and the science is still perfectly good. So unfortunately, I do think we're going to take some losses, and hopefully it doesn't, they can find a way to come back up. But are some of and this wasn't something we discussed, but are you seeing some of the larger funds that typically only invest in, companies further along potentially consider investing in earlier stage companies, rethinking how they may approach things, trying to give a little optimism here for some of our early stage
some of the
companies.
legacy larger funds certainly are and have multiple funds going on. Some are looking later stage, some are looking at just crossovers leading to the public markets. Some of those funds are actually even becoming RIAs, registered investment advisors, where they can now put their money into public companies.
Oh, okay.
So that's a big thing that's going on right now with VC, because a lot of people are saying, hey, VC is broken and we'd like to see it change a little.
Some of our companies are being told don't spend your time on VCs and just focus on family offices.
There are some VCs that are starting to look more and more like private equity funds.
Yeah, okay.
And some private equity funds are actually buying VCs to get into both asset classes. So I am seeing some of these bigger funds looking at earlier stage stuff as well. In fact, if you want to look at some of your best returns, you want to put it actually in earlier.
Okay.
Seed, Series A.
Seed, Series A, yeah.
Because as you start getting into the Series B and beyond, you don't get the nice valuations that you would like to see unless you're having to write a much larger check. But you can get some really great killer deals, especially in today's market where the valuations have calibrated since the 21 days of drunken sailors spending their money.
Yes.
So, but early stage stuff, I think, is really where you can make great returns.
So I want to ask you, wasn't what we talked about. Can you give any tips on family offices? We keep hearing that's where you need to make connections, and there's a lot more flexibility in finding dollars there, more than in the VC world at the moment in this climate. Any tips or ways to approach?
In our life science industry, when you look at the large group of family offices, only about 18 to 20% of family offices invest in life sciences companies. As you know, you need a real domain expertise to get in there. Most family offices put their money into real estate and things that are kind of a sure bet, like, hey, I know in 3 to 5 years I'm going to get my money in return. When I speak with family offices, and I speak with them very, very often, I'm having to spend a lot of time educating the LP, educating them as LPs. Look, pharma and biotech, med tech, med device, this is a long game.
Yeah.
These are long development cycles, and there's a lot of risk to it. It's a binary risk. One study could completely kill the company.
Yeah.
So educating the LPs, and especially with the family offices, because most of them are interested, putting their money, let's say, into oncology or neurodegeneration or Alzheimer's, things like that, because there's a family member who has suffered from that. And so what I find is education and with that family office, but there's only 1 out of every 5 that are really putting money into life sciences, and they won't lead in general.
They won't yet. Okay, that's helpful to know.
That's important.
Yeah. Would you say the same for angels? I mean, keep in mind, we're in a small market here. We actually have a lot of angel investments and capital, particularly in the tech space.
Yeah.
Some are starting to dabble a bit, leaning into, I'd say, medical device to learn a bit.
Yep.
But it can be overwhelming. I mean, as an ecosystem, do you think it's valuable for us to invest some time in trying to cultivate and educate angels in the space?
I think angel seed investors, high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth, I think that's where I would be spending a lot of time just educating, especially from Georgia Life Science perspective. What can you do to educate the LP community here in the Southeast to help them understand, wow, we have an emerging hub going on here, great technology that's coming out of places like Emory and Georgia Tech, what have you. That's where innovation and intellectual property happen. And then you're starting to also then build up, the human capital reserves and, making sure that people don't leave here. And then from there, the only other missing piece, unfortunately, is capital. Yep. So start working on the education piece with LPs. I think that's a perfect one to sort of focus in on.
That's great to hear. So last question, deep in capital. For emerging biotech and med tech companies in Georgia and beyond, how do these market dynamics that we're seeing right now really affect their ability to raise capital and secure partnerships? I think you kind of touched on it, but or should they consider exits even sometimes?
Yeah, well, they should consider it, well, as I mentioned, I do a lot of mentoring, coaching, certainly making investments. And then as an investment banker, I focus on the exit because I'm always asking the question, all right, you're doing, X, Y, or Z with your company. Yeah. Who are the buyers in this universe? And so I'm always asking that question because I have to think about what is that time frame? Yeah. And how do I get them involved early, get that traction, right? So I'm always asking the questions like, what does the exit look like? Is it an IPO or is it an M&A? And that's a very important component. So understanding sort of that roadway and that path is super important. But getting back to the, the funding stack, you have to have that capital stack. You have to have the multiple sort of avenues and options of raising the money. You can't control what's going on in the public markets right now. You can't control how a VC or at least the private capital markets are going to respond to what's going on in the public markets right now. They're holding on to the money. They're putting money into their current portfolio companies to extend the runway. Sure. So you can't really control that. And frankly, as a venture investor, we see a lot of opportunities. Okay. I mean, I'm at somewhere around 7,000, 8,000 a year. Wow. You can imagine how many per day I'm looking at, and I only have so much time in the day to look at it.
And now you're currently riding the storm out a little bit and hopes that 2026.
It's very difficult. So we're looking for transformative technologies in general as an investor that's really going to sort of take a look at the status quo and sort of turn it on its head. Yeah. And so if you have something like an incremental technology, it's probably unlikely to get funded in general. We're looking for kind of that next big home run. You have to almost understand what you call the power law in VC. And this is like, it just takes 1 or 2 big hits, like home runs, to make up the entire fund and give a return back to the LPs. Wow. But the majority, like 80 to 90%, fail. So we have to look at a lot, and I think as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you have to go and kiss a lot of frogs. Yes. And try to have that warm relationship, building the relationship with them to eventually get them to write a check into you. Wow,
it's so complicated, ever complicated right now, especially. But again, it's coming down to that stack, having the mentors and the people around you need.
Absolutely.
Sometimes making some tough decisions, but really diversifying our network, particularly in a small region like this, lean into that network that's outside and has networks, has people in the West Coast, the Northeast, and other areas. So let's dive into the founder investor fit. When choosing between VCA or B, what should founders probe beyond valuation?
Yeah, they should look at the strategic value of what the VC that they're interested, and assuming that they have a good connection with them, what strategic value they're going to bring to the company and to the founder and to the team. Do they give access to their network? Can they help out with finding other investors who are a part of their syndicate? How much diligence have they done? What is their experience, whether it's within the R&D cycle or maybe it's on commercial? So it's well beyond just the valuation question. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to invite an investor to sit on my cap table, I want to make sure that they're good investors. They're going to help me as a founder, as a CEO. They're just not going to be sitting there writing the check and just saying, all right, why did you make that decision? I want to look at them as a mentor. They've been there and done it, and they work with a lot of companies. And so I'm going to invite them onto my team as an advisor. And so that's what, at the end of the day, why I choose A over B or B over A.
I was going to say I'd apply the same questions to an advisor for my company as well. So you often say founders should think like investors. So what do you mean by this? Is it an evaluation case? And what models or questions?
Yeah, it's not just generally about a valuation. It's just not about financial metrics. Number one, investors don't invest in experiments. They invest in business models. I think the science...
And people. Yeah.
Absolutely. First and foremost, we invest in people. But there has to be a good business model, a sort of a viable business model there. And I just don't invest in experiments. If I don't see like a pathway, a viable pathway to success. So when I sit down with entrepreneurs, CEOs, look, I want you to think like me, how I'm looking at this. It's just well beyond the science. Yes, I have a PhD and I can understand all your big 5-syllable words. But putting all that aside, tell me a business case. What is the market? Why is this important? How is it uniquely differentiated versus status quo? How are you going to get there? What's the cost to do that? What is the return for investors? One of the VC, a general partner in a VC that I spent a lot of time with over the last few years, it's interesting. He took a very simplistic approach. He goes, there's 3 questions that I ask every founder. What does the company do? Why should I care? And how am I going to make money? And if they cannot articulate that in a very convincing manner or have that, strong conviction, he's unlikely to make an investment. So it's that simple. So, and there's a lot that goes into that, market differentiation, obviously the markets that we look at, is it an interesting model and how can I get there? But at the end of the day, how are you going to make money for the investor and over what period of time? And I would like to have entrepreneurs understand that because they have to also understand that I also have investors. I have LPs.
You have people to report to too.
I'm stewarding their capital and I have to report back to them saying, we put it, $10 million into this company, and this is why we did this, and this is when you're going to.
You got to answer the same 4 questions.
Expected return. So I always when I say think like an investor, I take my entrepreneurs through this case of a GP LP math. How are the LPs going to make money? They're writing checks into me, so I deploy that capital. When are they going to get a return? And that's one of the big issues we have right now in the current capital markets. We have a liquidity crisis. LPs are expecting a return on their money, either through IPO or M&A, and it's just not happening quick enough. So LPs are yelling at GPs, hey, I want my money. Give it back to me. And
so you have your own pressures coming down. So
so I'm hitting both sides, right?
Sure. Well, I think it also speaks to the age-old thing where you may have an amazing scientist, has a great idea. They want to be the person in the room doing the pitch. They're not always the right person, and it gets to hiring the right team and the right CEO, frankly, that can have these types of conversations.
That's right. So, I also like to tell the entrepreneur, look, the science itself is not going to sell the investment. And I think that's difficult for a lot of scientific founders to understand it. Oh, I'm just going to, sort of build it and do all these science experiments, and the data should speak for itself. and the money will start coming in, and the sort of Kevin Costner, the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. That's not the case. You still have to articulate what does that mean, and how is it going to help out society or what you're doing to solve a problem, and then what is that going to mean for the investor? So that's
some founders have a hard time hearing that, though.
It is.
Yeah, we call it founder syndrome in the nonprofit space.
Well,
it's the same thing,
and
probably.
it's kind of like, oh, what do you mean? This is my baby. Like,
I know.
I have to give it up, and
I'll give you a different chief scientific officer. Yeah, there you go. There's another big title. So I might rapid fire just because this is going a bit long, and I think you have a flight to make. Healthy aging thesis. You focus on healthy aging, longevity, and where the credible wedges now, biomarkers, neurodegeneration, there's one of the big words, metabolic health. What excites you and what's overhyped?
I like cardiometabolic disease, especially with all the hype around, and rightfully so, around GLP-1s. But trying to solve some of the bigger issues like obesity and diabetes I like to combine
the downstream effects of solving those.
Yeah, I like to combine those into diabesity.
Oh, that's nice. Diabesity.
There you go. But I think that's an exciting area. A lot's going to go on there because it does start with, the cardio and metabolic put together, and there's a lot of things that certainly stem from that. So I don't believe that's hype. And you're seeing a lot of investors as well as companies in that space. On the neurodegenerative side, look, I have a passion for Alzheimer's. My father has Alzheimer's. It's a crappy disease.
We're struggling
so
with that
anything in that
in-laws.
neurodegeneration space, ALS, Parkinson's, what have you, in that space, I think is an exciting area, and there's a lot of money going into that. And researchers around the world are making just tremendous progress.
Well, and now with the integration of AI, looking at the data, I think there's so much opportunity in that space to move more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last one is on oncology. Researchers and companies around the world are just making tremendous progress there. So those are the three that I'm really super focused in on. I'm not, when we talk about healthy aging and longevity, there's some people who think, like a Brian Johnson out in California. It's like, oh, I want to be 130 years old. I'm not interested in sort of extending lifespan. I'm interested in improving the quality of life while you're still here on Earth.
Sure.
And that to me is healthy aging and longevity.
What were you excited to hear about the age tech the person? We were at our award ceremony, right? So I didn't know if you're familiar with that. They have 2 offices, I think, in California now.
That's right. So it's more about quality of life than it is about extending the life. I'm not sure I want to live to 130, right? But I certainly, while I'm on this earth, I certainly want to have a high quality of life.
No, most
definitely. And we're finding, those therapeutic areas that I talked about, oncology, cardiometabolic, and neurology or neurosciences are some of the big areas.
No, I think it's so important. And you may have heard Lynn Durham with Georgia Core talk. She's had 3 different types of cancer, survived it. And for her, it's all about quality of life. That's why she loves this industry. It's given her that quality of life. So I think as we continue to progress and invest in new and exciting technologies to help people live their best life, it's really important. Georgia, I'm going to bring it home a little bit. You've called organizations like ours, associations, Georgia Life Sciences, as vital. We like this, obviously, since our name of the show is Vitals. I'm being a shameless plug. Why are we vital as associations, as conveners in our community, and what specific community behaviors actually have you seen move the needle, or whether it's around talent or space, whatever it might be?
Yeah, this is very analogous. So I serve on the board of directors for Biocom California, California Life Sciences. I certainly do a lot of work with bio. As a very strong advocate of not only of policy, but of research there. Sure. I love what you guys are doing. It's very vital to entrepreneurs, to the ecosystem, whether that's convening people like we're here today with industry events to get out the message, the awareness of what's going on from a technology standpoint, trying to bring investors and entrepreneurs together. Policy is a huge part, especially whether it's in Washington, D.C. or here in Georgia, trying to look at R&D tax credits, anything to do with innovation that might be at risk because of IRA or some other things. So a lot of policy issues that you guys are pushing forward, which is absolutely crucial for our industry. Same thing is happening out in California that I'm involved with as well. And to me, it's all about innovation and not sort of interrupting that innovation. So anything you can do there. So I'm really thankful for people like yourself and your organization to help out entrepreneurs in that space. But then even sort of taking what you guys are doing locally and trying to find the strengths within there to help build out with the entrepreneurs and building relationships with the academic institutions, with the human capital that is here, and trying to just build those relationships up. Because a lot of times in an emerging hub, you don't have the hubs like Southern California or San Francisco, or even in Boston.
Yeah.
So I still think there's ways of where you can work together with these entrepreneurs to help them get that out there. And in today's digital world, you can,
we can
be
definitely
doing
do
that stuff, right?
Yep.
So I think there's just a number of things that you guys continue to do that help out any emerging hub, especially here in Georgia, that'll help out investors and help out with entrepreneurs as well. So
I'm going to ask, it's important the industry plug into us, though. And this is something I think smaller associations struggle with. It's an obvious thing to get engaged in California or in Massachusetts, and frankly, even in Jersey or Pennsylvania, because the industry is so large. I mean, it's been interesting over the last 6 months with all the upheaval in research investment and NIH cuts, et cetera. Our small companies are engaging on policy matters. In my 19 plus years until this year, it's never been to the scale now. And I think policy is, for better or worse, it's integrated into science, whether you want it to be or not. And we can't get away from it. So I thank you for the compliment and for the work we're doing and other associations are, but it is a big piece of it.
It is a big piece. And, when I was first in science, over 30 years ago, I always just thought about safety and efficacy when you're developing a therapeutic, for example. We always thought getting to working with the FDA, it's all about safety and efficacy. And I said, well, and it's changed over that period of time. Now that I always tell entrepreneurs, there's really 4 legs to the stool. Yes, it's safety and it's efficacy, but who's going to pay for it and at what price? And so those 4 legs of the stool on the sort of the reimbursement side, the payer dynamics has to be involved. And that's where organizations like GLS will come in and say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make it more affordable? Who's going to pay for it with, through CMS or, in other countries as well. So.
Great. Well, let's wrap some things up. One hard truth you wish more first-time biotech or medical device founders knew, or one habit that dramatically improves their odds.
Yeah, it goes well beyond the science. Really, science is just not going to sell itself. It's necessary, but you also need sort of business acumen to move forward. If I was a first-time CEO, PhD, coming out of out of my postdoc or trying to start a company, having some business acumen and building a team around me where they have business sense.
So there's still value in the MBA?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Some people said no. So.
Yeah, I absolutely do, because it makes you think differently. It's a different language than understanding about, biochemistry or physics or chemistry, other, or microbiology, things like that. You really have to understand the numbers and how those numbers ultimately also work in with like marketing and sales. And, at the end of the day, as a CEO, you're a salesperson. You're trying to sell your company to an investor. And so I think it's super important. You have to go well beyond just the science. The science is not going to sell itself. So that's what I wish I sort of, one of the hard truths. And, as a founder, you might have to say to yourself, like, am I the right person to take this forward? Can I step aside, be the chief scientific officer, but bring in a CEO who's done this before? And you'll see, I think that's the way I would like to see that. But that's a tough discussion to have.
Self-reflection's hard for people.
Yeah, I've had to have that tough discussion. It's not a fun one, but it's a necessary one.
Well, last thing, a little bit more fun. I like to end my interviews with a fun fact about the person, something we may not know that's maybe not related to industry. So what's something about you we should all know, Dave?
I'm a baseball player at heart. I've been playing since I've been, 4 years old. And I went to Ohio State. Got drafted out of Ohio State after 2 years.
What am I supposed to say?
OH.
OH?
IO.
There you go. Sorry to all my Georgia schools.
There you go. As long as you're not from Michigan.
No, not at all.
Don't like
too
blue.
Cold. Too cold.
Don't like blue.
No offense to Mishbaya.
But I played AAA minor league baseball.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then after 2 years, blew up my knee. and had decided I had to go back and finish all my education. So that was my plan B. My plan A was
you
to play
had a
baseball.
plan B. That's good.
Yeah.
So. Well, that is amazing. And if I'm able to lure you back to Atlanta and get you really good seats, because we do have good seats at Truist Park, I'd love to have you back.
Great. This is a great ecosystem. I'd love to see it grow.
Thanks. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, David, and for coming down to Georgia and visiting. We hope to stay in touch and have some other conversations in the future. Thank you all for listening to the Vitals podcast out of Georgia Life, from Georgia Life Sciences, and delivered in part with Podcast Media.